book, there are a number of poems with that title. And this particular poem is partly inspired by the great Turkish poet Nazim Hikmet. Maybe some of you guys know about Nazim Hikmet. He spent many years imprisoned and still somehow wrote some of the most unsentimentally life-affirming poetry I've ever read. This world. You can never have enough of this world. Its peaches, their taste so sudden a sitting man stands. The kind hands of dusk, the boulders along the highway, great blooms of time. You can never have enough of wakening in a bed beside a woman you love, her body fragrant with itself, and the nasturtium out the window holding the dew, the sweet water of dawn in their frail green bowls. You can never have enough of the poet in the prison infirmary looking out every window just to find one single tree, nor enough of the night fisherman's net dragging in stars, the dark veils of tadpoles swimming in the ditch, the dog sleeping in the shade of the mule sleeping as the afternoon cools, the boy kissing the girl's breasts behind the water tank. You can never have enough of this world, and yet how we tire of it, how we raise our hand against it, how we avoid it, as if it were a mother saying, "Look me in the eye, just look me in the eye." Takes place in Santa Barbara, where I live. I actually live in Carpinteria, but Santa Barbara, Carpinteria all kind of blends together in a sense. And it's a Christmas time poem, too. It's called Willie and Frank. This morning at the barber shop, I listened to Willie, my 80-year-old barber, tell jokes about the Raiders quarterback while he cut my hair. I don't follow football, but enjoy following Willie's banter. It was warm in the shop from the heater. There were some powdered donuts out. Cheesy Christmas music played on the radio, and whenever a woman walked by, Willie paused from his clipping to drink her in. Willie has fleshy old man earlobes, filmy, careworn eyes, and a penchant for making everyone around him happy. In the window of the shop, there's a framed newspaper photograph of Willie about to cut a boy's messy mop of hair with a monstrous set of gardening shears. Willie's parents came here from Mexico, and he was raised on Dos Pueblos Ranch in nearby Goleta. His father, a farmhand, plowed the fields with a team of 4 horses, while his mother did the work of raising 3 boys. There was no electricity in the cabin, Willie says, and sometimes he and his older brother, when their father was tired, would hitch the wagon to 2 of the horses, Ike and Maggie, and ride that horse-drawn wagon up the canyon to get more firewood. Fallen oak branches they'd chop into smaller pieces. He can still see Maggie, he says, still see her in his mind's eye. Then a homeless man came in, interrupting his talking, interrupting the Christmas music, saying, "Hello, Willie, hello," and asked for electric tape to fix his bicycle. Without pausing from his clipping, Willie said, "Sure, Frank, you know where it is." And the man walked to the back of the shop and began opening drawers. I could smell him when he passed. Then I heard him eating. the sounds of a mouth chewing. Willie seemed not to notice. And during a pause in the clipping, I craned my neck around in the chair. Eyes wide and horribly desperate, the man was eating the powdered donuts, mashing them into his mouth, and it was hurting his throat to swallow the bites. So this is another poem called This World, and it's another local-ish poem inspired by the beach above the UCSB campus where I took a walk one day. The poem has in it this word clears, C-L-E-A-R-S, which I don't know if it's in the dictionary or not, but I just liked it, so I put it in there. And I'm using it kind of like as if it were clarities. Clears. This world. I'm walking on the beach in late afternoon, listening to sea lions on the buoys bark across the silty clears of this October atmosphere. Beyond the sea lions, the oil platform, a lone fishing boat plying the channel, and the iris dark of the mountain islands. As I walk, I smell fish, I smell salt, I smell kelp. Up coast, pelicans hunt with their slow suddenness, heavy stealth. Plovers huddle in the dunes, and the waves leave behind their sheery opaline curtains that never quite end the show. Eventually, I make it to the 4 pilings of the gone pier. 100 feet offshore, the last remnants of a thing once bustling and entire, they are a piercing forlorn. But looking carefully, I notice the profiles of some cormorants. The old pilings are propping maybe 40 of them up, many with necks articulate and wings unfurled. This is this world, the kingdom we've been looking for. Thank you. I felt about as sexy as a doorknob when I did that. Well, yeah, maybe doorknobs are sexy to some of us. Yeah. Oh, gosh. This is a shorter one with a similar tone to the last one. Not so sexy, but hopefully somehow worthwhile. It's called Sycamore, which is a tree I know we're all familiar with here in this part of the world. Sycamore. Dear branch in the distance, you don't speak English, but here I am writing you. Dear branch in the distance, you render me silly. You make me write poems that include phrases like, dear branch in the distance. If only I could record the grace of your branch, then everything would be okay. There'd be justice, clear and total justice, and the mockingbird would finally cease her song. Dear branch in the distance, if I really look at you, really carefully try to see you through my open front door, I notice you are swaying a little in the wind. It is almost summer. The train whistles from the tracks, oh, dear branch in the distance. I should read some sexy poems to you guys. I feel like something is wanting to assert itself tonight, and I have no problems with sex. Hayden Carruth, the great American poet who died not so long ago, in this interview, the very, very end of his life, he was, in his late 80s. I don't know if I can say this on camera, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. He said, "Why not admit it? Fucking was my favorite thing to do." Why am I so ashamed of this? It was just so much fun, And to hear that from this old, magnificent, dignified, great American man of letters was somehow really cute and reassuring that I'm not alone with that thought. So let's read a sexy poem. I have a few of those in here. I'm going really off topic. I thought tonight was going to be kind of somber and autumnal, but apparently, well, I can't do deer after all this sex talk. So here's Bellybutton. This is a version of an ancient Sanskrit poem. The poet's name is Narasimha, and I don't know much about this poet, but this book contains a number of versions of old Sanskrit poems. Poems of great sensuality. It's one of the most, I find, rich bodies of literature that few of us in the U.S. seem to know about. It hasn't been translated all that much, ancient Sanskrit poetry. And when it has been translated, it's been translated kind of awkwardly, academically. So I tried my hand at a version of one of these old poems. Bellybutton. The young girl sees her belly button deepen. Opal threads along her breasts where the skin has stretched. Sneaking glances and mirrors, and her hips have grown richer. At night, she tortures her waist with twine, accenting the hourglass shape. Yet out in the streets, still she clings to girlish shyness, clings angrily. This one's called Blooming Jasmine. And it's a definition of the odor of blooming jasmine. My attempt at a definition of the odor of blooming jasmine, which we all know is maybe the greatest fragrance ever.
Night blooming.
Even better.
After a day in bed.
After a day in bed. Blooming jasmine. Drunk arc of April, Scirocco of sugar, feral bearer of tidings from the idiot heart of the moon. At dusk, my wife and I take turns standing close to your rich drifts of ruleless, long-legged sweetness, inhaling and inhaling and inhaling until our pinched, creased, antic faces lapse into flower. So now I'll read the poem about the deer. called Sycamore Canyon. And it's a reference to Sycamore Canyon down on the way to Malibu that many of us, I'm sure, have been to. I used to go there a lot with my dad when I was a kid and hike and run. And the poem is also dedicated to a dear friend and inspiration and poet and singer-songwriter who lives in Ojai, Vaughn Montgomery. Sycamore Canyon. The dead doe on the Pacific Coast Highway was lying on her left side. She was almost the same color as the dirt around her. Whenever a car passed, it was Sunday and people were driving the coast. The fur on her neck would rise in the wind. Her eyes were dry and cracked. They looked like the skin of baked apples. They did not shine. Her left hind leg was so broken it looked absurd. A car must have hit. The doe defecated. Wind-blown pebbles stuck to the shit. The hooves were dusty and large. They did not seem like the hooves of something dead. When I reached down and picked up a front leg, I could feel the clarity of her old running. She made me nervous. I was afraid she would stand up and come alive. How many cars will pass tonight, I wondered, and make the fur on her neck rise? It saddened me no one would be there to document every time this happened, that no one would say, "There, look, the fur on her neck, it's rising in the wind." Okay, I'm going to do another version. This one's very loose version of a poem by a poet of Kazakhstan. And I discovered this poem in a book by Ahmed Faiz. He did a version of this poem by this poet of Kazakhstan. So my version of this original poem is actually a version based on a version. So it's probably very, very far away from the source in many ways. But I think there's still something here. It's called A Night in the Desert, after Uljaz Omar Ali Suleiman. And I think we all can relate to this state of drought that the poem gets at, literal and metaphorical. There is no dew anywhere. It's strange. There is no dew. Not on the camel's cheek, the goat herd's sleeve, the brow of the moon. Nothing. There's no dew anywhere. Cracked boulders, smoldering stones. Waves of heat are starting to roll through this night in the desert, and there's no dew anywhere. Skeletons of shrubs rattle their bones, crying, "There's no dew, nothing, no dew anywhere," while the desert reveals its mortal heart longing for the merest drop to fall. The only revelers, meanwhile, are the jackals. Packs and packs of roving jackals, roving with joy as they stomp and crush the rare green shoot. There is no dew, they sing, no dew anywhere. And soon even the moon, our way-lighting moon, will eventually sink down. sink down just before dawn when the winds and sands go still. And on the forehead of some dusty, broken traveler, may the dew place her small, cool hand. Another version of an old Chinese poet, and I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. Cao Sung is my best guess. And I titled it War Map. And this is a fairly free take on this old poem. War Map. Closer hills, nearer rivers, dragged onto the war map. Our hills and our rivers, the suffering of our neighbors. How can we get by on a turnip or two yanked from some dead friend's ragged field? Don't talk to me about the cause. Don't mention sacrifice, ideals, all that slop. Your good general leaves in victory 10,000 corpses behind. And maybe I'll end with this poem, which starts off rather darkly, but I think gets at something more than that. When I was thinking about this poem earlier today, while planning the reading, I thought of this great quote by Jung, which some of you guys maybe know, and I'm remembering it from having read it a while ago, so it might not be exactly right. But it was something like, enlightenment is not imagining figures of light, but making the darkness conscious. Enlightenment is not about imagining figures of light, but making the darkness conscious. Quite a remark. And I think this poem is somehow trying to grapple with that truth idea somewhat. And it's called prayer. Dear Lord, in this time of darkness, help us see the darkness. Dear Lord, help us to not pretend. No more pretending. Dear Lord, may our gaze be defenseless and unchartable. Teach us the piety of the open eye. Dear Lord, in this time of darkness, may we be unafraid to mourn, and together and hugely. May dignity lose its scaffolding, faces crumble like bricks. Dear Lord, let grief come to grief. And then, O Lord, help us to see the bees yet in the lavender, the spokes of sunlight down through the oaks, and the sleep-opened face of the beloved. In the afternoon, all around her, in her small, freckled hands. Thank you guys very much.